I always thought betrayal would come in whispers, in secret text messages, in hushed phone calls behind closed doors, in the kind of careful deception that takes months, maybe years, to unravel. But I was wrong. It didn't sneak up on me like a thief in the night. It didn't come wrapped in doubt, making me question my own sanity. No, Marian destroyed our marriage in the loudest, most public way possible, and she did it with a smile. It was supposed to be just another party, something we had done countless times before. A gathering at Oliver and Bethany's house, filled with our usual circle of friends. The people we had spent years with, the ones who had watched us fall in love, get married, build our lives together. I arrived expecting an evening of drinks and laughter, of inside jokes and shared memories. I never expected my world to shatter in front of all of them. The night had started normally enough. I was standing near the fireplace, drink in hand, nodding along to a conversation I wasn't really listening to. Someone was telling a story, something about work, something that would have made me laugh on any other night. But I wasn't paying attention. I was watching her. Marian stood across the room, her dark hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders, her dress hugging her body in a way that had once made me proud, once made me feel lucky. But tonight, something felt different. She was standing too close to him. I didn't recognize him at first, just another face in the sea of people. He was tall, confident, the kind of man who walked into a room and expected it to bend around him. And Marian was leaning into him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Too familiar, too intimate. A cold, sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I told myself I was imagining it, that the way she touched him was nothing, that the laughter between them was meaningless, that she was my wife, and she loved me, and that was all there was to it. Then she turned, met my gaze from across the room, and smiled. Not the warm smile I had fallen in love with, not the affectionate, teasing grin she gave me when she caught me sneaking a second helping of dessert. No, this was something else. This was a smile of knowing, a smile of satisfaction, a smile of a woman who was about to destroy me and had no regrets about doing it. And then she spoke. "Relax, darling," she said, her voice carrying across the room, silencing conversations, turning heads. "It's just one night." The room froze. The laughter died. The music seemed to dim, as if the universe itself had paused to absorb the weight of her words. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My breath left me in a rush, my fingers tightening around the glass in my hand. One night, like it meant nothing, like I meant nothing. I searched her face for an explanation, for some sign that this was a misunderstanding, a cruel joke. But she just stood there, her hand still in his, her lips curled in that smug, satisfied smirk. She knew exactly what she was doing, and so did he, the man beside her, her lover, her affair partner, the stranger who had taken my place, had the audacity to smirk at me, as if I were the fool here, as if I had lost a game I didn't even know I was playing. A few people chuckled awkwardly, shifting uncomfortably, unsure whether to pretend they hadn't heard, or to watch the spectacle unfold. Others avoided my gaze altogether, as if my humiliation were contagious, as if acknowledging it would somehow drag them into my nightmare. And me? I just stood there, my body stiff, my mind blank. 1,000 thoughts raced through my head. Do something. Say something. Demand answers. Make a scene. Walk away. Fight. Yell. Beg. But I did nothing. Because in that moment, standing in the middle of a crowded room, I realized something even worse than the fact that my wife was unfaithful. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't regretful. She was proud. And that was what broke me. For the first few seconds after Marian's words hit me, I didn't move. I couldn't. It was as if my body had forgotten how to function, as if my brain had short-circuited from sheer disbelief. "Relax, darling. It's just one night." Her voice still echoed in my head, taunting me, mocking me. The casual way she had said it, like we were discussing a weekend getaway, not our marriage, not the life we built together. The silence that followed her words stretched across the room, thick and suffocating. People avoided my eyes, shifting uncomfortably, pretending to be engrossed in their drinks or suddenly very interested in their phones. Others exchanged glances, The kind of silent communication that said, "Oh, this is bad." And then there were the ones who weren't pretending at all. The ones who stared openly, waiting to see what I would do. Because this was a spectacle now. My humiliation had become their entertainment. Marian didn't seem to care. In fact, she looked almost amused by it all, as if she had been waiting for this moment. The man beside her, her lover, stood there with his hand still wrapped around hers, his smirk never fading. I swallowed, forcing myself to breathe, forcing myself to find my voice. I had 1,000 things to say, 1,000,000 questions, but the only one that came out was, "What the hell did you just say?" I barely recognized my own voice. It was quiet, strained, but underlined with something dark, something dangerous. Marian tilted her head slightly, her smile widening. "Oh, don't act so shocked, Ethan," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You've been distant for months. I just found someone who actually appreciates me." A few people gasped at the sheer boldness of her words. Others murmured in hushed voices, whispering amongst themselves. Distant? I had been distant? I felt my jaw tighten, my hands curling into fists at my sides. The sheer audacity of her words made my blood boil. I had been distant? I was the problem? I took a step forward, and for a second, I thought she would finally look guilty, finally show a shred of remorse. But no, Marian didn't move. She didn't flinch. She just stood there, waiting, daring me to react. A lump formed in my throat, a sickening mixture of anger, hurt, and betrayal. "So, this is it? This is how you tell me? In front of everyone?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. She gave a small, careless shrug. "I mean, you had to find out sooner or later. I figured why not just get it over with?" Get it over with. Like I was some obstacle she had to clear. Like the years we spent together, the moments we shared, the love we had once promised each other meant nothing. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. "And what, exactly, do you expect me to do right now? Shake his hand? Wish you two a good night?" She chuckled, as if this was some kind of joke. "Oh, Ethan, don't be so dramatic." Dramatic? I stared at her, really stared, and for the first time, I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. This wasn't the woman I married. This wasn't the woman I had spent years building a life with. This was a stranger. And this stranger had just torn my life apart in front of an audience. I looked around the room, at the people who were still watching, whispering, waiting for the explosion. I could feel the rage burning inside me, the absolute fury threatening to take over. But more than that, I felt cold, numb, and that terrified me more than anything. Because at that moment, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. I wasn't just angry. I wasn't just hurt. I was done. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at her. At them, my wife, Marian, still holding onto another man's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. The smirk on his face, the amusement in her eyes. It was all too much. The room around me had become nothing but a blur of muted conversations and stolen glances. The weight of everyone's eyes pressed down on me, waiting for me to do something. Anything. I had always imagined that if something like this ever happened, though I never truly believed it would, I'd react differently. Maybe I'd yell, maybe I'd storm out, maybe I'd demand answers. But I did none of that. Instead, I laughed. Not a loud, exaggerated laugh, but a quiet, hollow one. The kind of laugh that comes when there's nothing left to feel except disbelief. "You think this is funny?" I asked, my voice calm. Too calm. Marian raised an eyebrow, as if she couldn't understand why I wasn't throwing a fit. "Oh, come on, Ethan. It's not like this is some huge betrayal. It's just a little fun. Just a little fun." I exhaled slowly, running a hand over my face, trying to ground myself. If I let the emotions bubbling inside take control, I wasn't sure what I'd do. I turned my gaze to the man beside her. He looked younger than me, maybe early 30s, with an arrogance that made my skin crawl. "And you?" I asked, my voice sharper now. "What do you have to say?" He shrugged, completely unfazed. "I don't owe you anything, man." The audacity, the sheer lack of respect. And that's when it hit me. I had already lost. Not just my wife. Not just my dignity in that moment, but something deeper. The belief that we had something real, something unbreakable. Because Marian wasn't apologizing. She wasn't ashamed. She had planned this. She had made sure that when she dropped the bombshell, it would be in front of everyone. So I did the only thing I could do. I took a step back. All right, I said, my voice even. You win. Marian blinked. What? You win, I repeated, feeling a strange sense of clarity wash over me. You wanted me to see this? You wanted me to know? Well, congratulations, Marian. I know now. For the first time that night, her smirk faltered, just slightly. I could tell she had expected more from me. A fight, an outburst, anything to validate what she had done. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction, because the truth was, she had already lost me. And that was something she hadn't counted on. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. Marian was still standing there, gripping his hand, but something had changed in her expression. The confidence, the sheer arrogance she had moments ago, was fading, replaced by something else. Confusion. She hadn't expected this. She had planned for anger, for shouting, for accusations. She wanted a dramatic scene, something that would make her feel powerful, something that would put me beneath her in front of all these people. But I wasn't giving her that. I turned away from her, scanning the room, taking in the faces of people I had known for years, friends, colleagues, acquaintances. Some of them looked uncomfortable, some embarrassed, and some even amused, as if this was the most entertaining thing they had seen in weeks. And that's when it hit me. These weren't my people anymore. This wasn't my life anymore. I had spent years building something with Marian, believing we were a team, believing we were partners. And yet, here she was, tearing it all apart like it meant nothing. I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of that realization settle in my chest. Then I did the one thing I never thought I'd do. I let her go. Enjoy your night, I said, turning my back on her completely. A murmur spread through the room, people whispering, trying to make sense of my reaction. They had expected fireworks. They had expected a breakdown. They hadn't expected me to walk away. Wait, Marian called, something sharp in her tone. That's it? That's all you have to say? I stopped in my tracks but didn't turn around. What do you want me to say, Marian? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Do you want me to beg? To cry? To fight for you in front of everyone? She didn't answer, and that was all the answer I needed. I kept walking. Out the door, past the murmurs, past the judgmental stares, past the smirking face of the man who thought he had won something tonight. But the truth was, I was the one who had won, because I was finally free. The night air hit me like a slap to the face, cold and unforgiving. I hadn't realized how suffocating that house had been until I stepped outside, away from the stares, the whispers, the humiliation. I stood on the driveway, staring at my car, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. My mind was racing, my body buzzing with emotions I couldn't even begin to untangle. Anger, betrayal, relief. I should have felt devastated. I should have felt like my world had just been ripped apart. But instead, I felt something else. I felt free. I had spent years loving a woman who clearly never loved me the same way. Years bending over backward, trying to be the perfect husband, making sacrifices, trusting her. And all it had taken was one night to realize that none of it had mattered. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, my breath coming out in slow, controlled exhales, trying to process everything. Then the door behind me creaked open. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I already knew who it was. Are you really just gonna leave? Marian's voice was sharp, impatient, like she was annoyed that I hadn't reacted the way she wanted me to. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, willing myself to stay calm. Then I turned to face her. She was standing in the doorway, arms crossed over her chest, her expression a mixture of irritation and something else, something I couldn't quite place. Wasn't that the point? I asked, my voice steady, emotionless. She let out a small, breathy laugh. Come on, Ethan. You're really just gonna walk away? After everything? That was what did it. That one sentence. I let out a sharp breath, shaking my head. After everything? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. Marian, you just humiliated me in front of everyone we know. You stood there with another man and told the entire damn room, that you were spending the night with him. What the hell do you expect from me? She didn't answer right away. For the first time tonight, she looked uncertain, as if she hadn't actually thought this far ahead. She hesitated. I didn't think you'd just walk away. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course you didn't. You wanted me to break. You wanted me to fight for you, to beg. You wanted a scene, a show. Well, sorry to disappoint you. Her jaw tightened. I didn't do this to hurt you, Ethan. My stomach twisted at the sheer audacity of her words. You keep saying that, I muttered, shaking my head, like somehow that makes it better. I took a slow step toward her, lowering my voice. You knew what you were doing. You wanted me to see. You wanted to humiliate me. And for what? Some twisted sense of power? Her expression flickered, just for a second, but it was enough. A flash of guilt, of realization, of something she wasn't willing to admit. Then it was gone. You're being dramatic, she said, rolling her eyes. It's just one night. There it was again. That damn phrase. Something inside me snapped. You keep saying that, I said, my voice tight, controlled. Like that's supposed to make it okay. Like it somehow makes this less of a betrayal. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Ethan, we've been in a rut for months. You have to see that. I needed, I don't know, something different. I didn't think it would be a big deal. A big deal. I stared at her, feeling like I was looking at a stranger. Wow, I said finally. You really don't get it, do you? She huffed. Oh, come on. You're making it sound like I cheated. I blinked. I actually laughed. A sharp, disbelieving laugh. You didn't? I shook my head, trying to wrap my mind around the sheer absurdity of her words. Marian, you stood in front of me, in front of everyone, holding another man's hand, telling me you were spending the night with him. What exactly would you call that? She shifted, her confidence wavering for the first time. It's just different, okay? I didn't lie to you. I didn't sneak around. I was honest. Honest. I had no words. I just stared at her, feeling the last remnants of whatever love I had left for her dissolve into nothing. You're unbelievable, I muttered, turning back toward my car. That's it, she snapped. You're just gonna walk away? Not even gonna try to fix this? I stopped. Slowly, I turned back to her, meeting her gaze one final time. Marian, I said, my voice steady, final. There is nothing left to fix. And with that, I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away. I didn't look back, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt free. The drive home felt surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my own body. My hands gripped the wheel tightly, my knuckles white, but my mind was still trapped in that moment. The party, the way Marian smirked at me, the way she held his hand like it was nothing. It's just one night. The words echoed in my head, over and over, like a cruel joke I couldn't escape. I should have felt devastated. I should have been angry, but all I felt was numb. The weight of the moment, of the public betrayal, hadn't fully settled yet. It was too fresh, too unreal. I wasn't even sure what I was supposed to do next. Go home? Sleep in the bed we shared? Pretend I could ever look at her the same way again? No, not a chance in hell. As I pulled into my driveway, the house felt different. The place that had once been a home, a safe space, was now nothing more than walls and a roof. A structure that had housed a lie for who knows how long. I sat in the car, staring at the front door, the same one Marian had walked through every day as if she wasn't planning to destroy me. I should have seen the signs. The way she had become distant, the extra time spent out with friends, the sudden change in how she dressed. I had been blind, and now I was awake. The unraveling. I finally forced myself inside, the quiet of the house settling around me like a suffocating fog. Our wedding photo still hung in the hallway. I ripped it off the wall. The glass cracked on impact as it hit the floor, a jagged line cutting through our smiling faces. Fitting. I moved through the house like a ghost, pacing from room to room, looking at everything differently. This wasn't my home anymore. It was just a place where I had been played for a fool. I grabbed a duffel bag and started throwing in clothes. I didn't even think about what I was packing. I just knew I couldn't stay here. As I was zipping up the bag, my phone buzzed. Marian. I stared at the screen, watching her name glow against the darkness. A dozen missed calls. Several unread texts. I finally opened them. Marian. Where did you go? Marian. Are you serious right now? Marian. Ethan. Don't be childish. Marian. It wasn't that big of a deal. Come home. Marian. We can talk about this. Marian. Why aren't you answering? I let out a bitter laugh. Not that big of a deal. I threw the phone onto the bed, rubbing my face with both hands. Then, another buzz. I ignored it. Then another. And another. I finally picked it up again. But this time, it wasn't Marian. It was Bethany. I frowned, hesitating for a moment before answering. Ethan, she breathed, her voice low and urgent. You need to come back. I froze. What? Marian is losing it. I exhaled slowly, my patience gone. Bethany, I don't care. She made her choice. Let her deal with it. No, Ethan, listen to me, she said quickly. She's saying you overreacted. That you're just being jealous and controlling. A humorless chuckle escaped me. Of course she is. But that's not the worst part, Bethany continued. She's telling everyone that you knew about it beforehand. That you were okay with it. My stomach dropped. What? She's saying that you and her had talked about opening up the marriage and that this was your idea. That you just freaked out at the last minute and made a scene. For a moment, all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Are you serious? I finally asked, my voice dangerously calm. Bethany sighed. Ethan, she's spinning the story, making you look like the crazy one. Some people are already believing her. I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening around the phone. Of course, she wouldn't just own up to it. Of course, she had to make me the villain. I had walked away, and that wasn't good enough for her. She needed to win. She needed to make sure that if she was going down, she was taking me with her. I closed my eyes for a brief second, my mind racing. And then, just like that, the numbness was gone. The turning point. I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed my keys and walked right back out the door. I had nothing left to say to Marian. But if she wanted to play games, I was about to show her that she had severely underestimated me. I don't remember much of the drive back to the party. My mind was locked in a storm of emotions. Rage, disbelief, and something sharper. Determination. Marian had already betrayed me in the worst way possible, but now she was rewriting the story, twisting the truth to make me look like the fool, the coward, the weak, jealous husband who changed his mind at the last minute. I wasn't going to let that happen. By the time I pulled up outside Oliver and Bethany's house, I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg people to believe me. I was just going to show them the truth. Back into the fire. The moment I stepped inside, the energy in the room changed. People noticed me immediately. The ones who had avoided my gaze earlier were now openly staring, whispering behind their hands. Some of them looked guilty, others amused. But I didn't care about them. I cared about her. Marian was standing in the middle of the living room, a drink in her hand, laughing with a small group of people. She looked relaxed, confident, as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just tried to destroy my reputation. Her eyes met mine, and something flickered in them. Surprise. She hadn't expected me to come back. Good. I took my time walking through the room, letting the tension build. Every step I took, more people turned to watch. Conversations quieted, the air buzzing with anticipation. By the time I stopped in front of her, the room was dead silent. Marian tilted her head, smirking slightly. Ethan, she said smoothly, I wasn't sure you'd be back. I let the words settle for a moment, then exhaled slowly. Neither did I. She chuckled, taking a sip of her drink. So, have you finally calmed down? A few people around her chuckled, clearly on her side, eating up the story she had fed them. I ignored them. I only looked at her. Let's cut the crap, Marian, I said evenly. You want to tell everyone the truth, or should I? She blinked, her smirk faltering for just a second before she recovered. What are you talking about? I let out a slow, almost amused breath. You're telling everyone I knew about this beforehand. That I was okay with you leaving with another man. That this was my idea. Marian's expression tightened, but she forced another casual laugh. Well, isn't that what happened? We've been struggling for months, Ethan. You knew I needed. Stop. The force in my voice cut through the air. She froze. For the first time tonight, I had control. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The screen was already open to my recently recorded audio files. Her face drained of color. The room held its breath. I hit play. And just like that, her lies shattered. The moment everything shifted, her voice filled the room, crystal clear. Relax, darling. It's just one night. Gasps. Whispers. People stiffened, glancing at each other, realizing what they had just heard. The recording continued, capturing every word she had said at the party. I mean, you had to find out sooner or later. I figured why not just get it over with? Oh, come on. You're making it sound like I cheated. It's not a big deal, Ethan. I just needed something different. The smirk on her lover's face was gone. The people who had been laughing with her, they were backing away. And Marian? Marian looked like she had just been hit by a truck. I let the recording play in full. I wanted everyone to hear it. I wanted everyone to understand. And when it ended, I let the silence hang, thick and heavy. Then I spoke. You were saying, Marian? She panicked. I saw it in her eyes. The way she looked around, desperate for an escape, for someone to back her up. But no one did, because the truth was right there. And she had just been exposed. The final blow. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. You tried to humiliate me tonight, I murmured. You thought you could rewrite the story and make me look like the bad guy. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. You wanted to ruin me? I whispered. Congratulations, Marian. You ruined yourself. Then I turned to leave. She grabbed my wrist. Ethan, she breathed, her voice shaking. Wait, we can talk about this. I met her eyes, really looked at her, and I felt nothing. Enjoy your night, Marian, I said. It's just one night after all. And then I walked away. For the last time. I didn't look back. Not when I stepped out of the house. Not when I heard Marian's voice calling after me. Not when I felt the weight of the night pressing down on my shoulders. I walked to my car with a strange feeling in my chest, lightness. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying the weight of a failing marriage. I wasn't carrying the endless questions, the doubts, the desperate attempts to make things work. I was free, letting go. By the time I pulled into the hotel parking lot, exhaustion was starting to creep in. I had grabbed a room for the night, not because I couldn't go home, but because I didn't want to. Home wasn't home anymore. I checked in, took the elevator up, and tossed my duffel bag onto the bed before sitting down. My phone buzzed. I already knew who it was. Marian. Marian. Ethan, please pick up. Marian. I didn't mean for it to go like this. Marian. Can we just talk? I stared at the messages for a long moment. Then I blocked her number. A fresh start. The next morning, I woke up feeling different. Lighter. Like I had shed something heavy. Something that had been dragging me down for years. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waking up to fix something that was already broken. And that realization was powerful. I checked my phone. A message from Bethany. Bethany, just so you know, people are talking. And not in the way Marian wanted. You handled yourself like a king last night. Everyone saw her for what she is. I smirked, shaking my head. Not that it mattered anymore. I wasn't looking back. Instead of wallowing, I got up, took a shower, and made a decision. I wasn't going to waste another second on a woman who didn't respect me. I was going to build something new. Maybe that meant moving to a new place. Maybe that meant reconnecting with old friends, focusing on myself, traveling. The one thing I knew for sure, my life wasn't over. It was just beginning. And Marian? She was nothing more than a lesson I had learned.